Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. It's summertime here in the vegetable garden, and while I haven't managed to get it all planted out this season, there's still plenty going on. In today's video we're going to have a look around and just see what's happening. Now, while they're not vegetables, something you'll see in my vegetable garden that really stand out is all the beautiful flowers. Here I've got my zinnias, which I've got a few different shades in this one spot, and they've all just volunteered. I haven't had a lot of time to get plants going this season and get them into the ground, but with these sorts of plants that you let go to seed, you don't have to worry about it year after year because they will take care of the growing themselves. Nasturtiums usually brighten up my garden at this time of year, as do the beautiful echinacea, which just comes back each year. I haven't planted these this year, but I did 2 years ago. The echinaceas are a perennial in the garden, so they come back with no effort. And I've noticed many new plants starting to grow in the garden, even though I didn't spread any seeds around. I did leave my plants to mostly go to seed last season, so I'm getting these new plants. I have been able to dig some of these plants up and give them to friends, so it's always nice to share some of this beauty around. Other flowering plants in the garden which tend to draw the bees in for pollination are these fennel flowers. They look a little bit like parsnip flowers, which attract a lot of bees as well. So that's the little yellowing ones. We've got some more nasturtiums in here, and this beautiful little lilac coloured flower is part of the chicory family. Now that one's from a radicchio plant, but I also have some from a curly leaf endive, and the flowers all look very similar. Hiding in amongst it all are the beautiful little flowers that are chamomile, always lovely in a tea. And we've always got some California poppies around as well. And this one here is a little marigold, which I've only just got going this season, so I'm hoping the seeds will spread around and keep that one going year after year. But enough of some of the flowers in my garden. What about the vegetables, I hear you ask? Well, just here I've got my cucumbers that I grow on this trellis each year. Now, the variety I've got going is just a long green variety, and I've had plenty already this season. But as you can see, there's plenty more coming. There's another one hiding just here. They grow really fast at this time of year. The chickens love to eat any of the excess, or the big ones that I kind of miss. And there's always plenty to share around with family and friends. Now, what I did find this year is a couple of volunteer cucumbers. Last year I grew some Lebanese cucumbers here, and while I didn't plant any, I have found a couple of plants growing just from cucumbers that I left here with seeds in them. So that's the first time I've had cucumbers volunteering in my garden. Here's another little one over here. Now, in this bed here is where I've planted some capsicums and also some chili plants. And I've got plenty of zinnias volunteering. Just here, I've got a volunteer Asian basil plant. I'm not sure which variety, but I grew quite a few last season. I have over the back there some eggplants, which are just starting to flower. So hopefully I'll get some eggplants by the end of the season. Just here are some Mizuna plants that just volunteered. So because there was plenty of space with the plants, I've let them grow. They bring in the bees, and you can also just cut those plants down, and I kind of just spread them around as a bit of a mulch as well. In addition to the volunteer Mizuna, I've also got beans volunteering. These are a purple bean that grew here last season, and so there's plenty of these plants coming through, which I just like to leave. I'll just kind of mingle them through the rest of the plantings and they won't do any harm. Right here is a volunteer tomato. Actually, there's 2 volunteer tomatoes. I haven't quite worked out what they are yet, but I'm sure that they'll be delicious. Now there's more of the purple beans that I'm growing up this trellis. It hasn't quite taken over it yet, but they have taken over a volunteer tomato in this space. Whatever volunteered this year, I kind of just left really. I've recently just done a big harvest of these beautiful purple beans. So there's not many left hanging at the moment, but judging by all these little flowers, there'll be plenty fairly soon. Now next to this fairly wild space that I didn't get cleared, and I certainly didn't get planted, is an area of bed that I did manage to get planted. And I've just got a row of sweet corn just here. And further along that bed, I've got a few zucchinis thrown in. There's some beetroot, and just along a bit further, I've got a patch of borlotti beans. With the borlotti beans, you can harvest them when they're young and green and eat them like that. But what I usually do is leave them to fully develop, and I'll harvest them for the seeds inside and use those in sort of bean dishes during winter. Now, one of the reasons that I don't harvest my borlotti beans young is that I plant out plenty of other beans. We've already seen the purple beans. Right here, I've got some rattlesnake beans. I've got a different variety on this trellis, which actually I've forgotten what it is. And just through the middle there, you can see a row of lazy housewife beans, which grow prolifically. So there's plenty of beans growing at the moment. Now if we just sneak through the garden here, we come to another area where I've got some more zucchinis. Now with these zucchinis, they actually germinated in my compost path because I buried some old big zucchinis last season. So they grew pretty easily, and as you can see, they've produced some really beautiful plants. This lot will be thrown to the chickens soon. They're just growing so fast that I'm missing most of it. Now I've planted out a few pumpkin or squash plants this season, and I'm not sure what they are. This is one of them that I got seeds from a friend, so I'll have to kind of do some research and see what I planted there. But it's starting to take off, and it might reveal itself soon. I've got my pumpkin trellis again, which I haven't trained any of these little pumpkin seedlings up, which I'll have to get going soon because they're starting to spread around the garden and starting to produce some flowers. It was just a bit of fun having them growing up my trellis last season. Now it is a bit of a jungle through here, but this is where my compost path is. There's various tomatoes growing through there, potatoes. I've got a huge Swiss chard that's doing pretty well just there. And this is another volunteer zucchini plant. We can probably get rid of this zucchini, pull that off and give that one to the chickens. And maybe grab this one today before it gets much bigger. Now over the back here, I've got yet another bean, and this is my scarlet runner bean. Last season, I just left a lot of the beans just hanging off the trellis, and you might even see some of them still here. And from time to time, I just came, grabbed a seed, shoved it in the ground. Here's another one. And, you know, planting beans can be as easy as that. So that leads us to the pumpkin patch, which is just getting going now. I was a bit slow getting the seeds in, but they're starting to take off across the ground. So that's exciting. They'll soon be starting to make those beautiful pumpkins. It's quite warm already this morning, so these pumpkins have wilted a little bit, even though I did give them a little bit of water earlier. These two little plants here are not pumpkins, but they're watermelon plants. They should be producing small watermelons. I hope we've got enough time in our season to actually get them growing, but we'll see. Now at this end of the garden where I essentially didn't get anything planted, I've got volunteer brassicas, which when brassicas volunteer, when you've got lots of different brassicas growing in the garden, they don't kind of grow true to seed. But I do like to keep them growing because I do find that they're great food for the chickens. Down further, I've got a variety of potatoes mixed in with some parsley, and there's plenty of parsnips just growing in over here, which again were volunteers. So that leads us on to my potato patch. Unfortunately, this season I didn't get sweet potatoes in. My sweet potato slips failed, so I didn't bother. But I did get a couple of varieties of potatoes in. A lot of them are being exposed to the sunshine, and so they're going a bit green, so they're past it. But as you can see, they're growing more potato plants, so I can spread them around. I often spread them around the swales just so that there's extra food in those areas should you ever need it one day. But I should really pull up some of these plants. Plenty of food hiding just below the surface. Now the garden beds here are kind of semi-cleared. I haven't planted them out yet, but I've got plenty for summer. I might start to plant these out in a couple of weeks with more autumn sort of fruiting crops like your brassicas and maybe some peas to see how they go. I might put some climbing peas or snow peas or something on that trellis just when it cools down a little bit. Now just next to these flowering lettuce plants, I have my gate trellis. Last season I grew some beautiful Turk's turban pumpkins on this, and I've planted some more. I think I've planted a white Turk's turban variety, which is this one. Again, I've got to sort of train these plants up these trellises, which I haven't got to yet, but I've got a couple of different varieties of pumpkins in that spot. Now this zone here is fairly wild. There's chamomile, there's some green onions that are going to seed. I can always harvest some of those green onions for sort of flavourings. Now this was my Swiss chard bed. It does need a bit of clearing, as you can see, to bring it back again. There's some volunteer tomatoes in there. And that's my former carrot patch over the back there, which went to seed. I actually haven't got any carrots in at the moment, so when it cools down a little bit, that's something I can focus on getting in. Just down from my potato beds are my two tomato beds. One is going a lot better than the other one. The other one was a little bit of an experiment where I planted lots of cabbages, collie and some broccoli with the plan to plant the tomatoes in the middle of it all, which I didn't get into till late. I still haven't moved out all of these brassicas, and the tomatoes just aren't taking off like they are in this other bed. I've still got cabbages that are well and truly ready to harvest. Some collie that I missed. There's another cabbage hiding in amongst there. I'll have to do a harvest and do some sauerkraut making. This little collie looks ready to harvest though, so I might get that before it looks like the one just before it. Here's one of my tomatoes, which is kind of not doing too great in this garden bed, next to some cabbages that are choosing to go to flower. I just had so many cabbages in this bed. I gave some to family and friends, used some for myself, but as you can see, there's still plenty to get out of this garden bed. I do have a variety of different tomatoes in these garden beds, including some Roma varieties. I've got some Tigerella. I've got the little pear, sort of yellow pear variety, which is really lovely and sweet. I've also got blueberry tomatoes, but they do take a long time to ripen, and sometimes in my climate they don't quite get there. In amongst it all is the beautiful basil, which seems to always come too early in my climate for the red tomatoes. So to save the flavour, you need to really preserve it and make a batch of pesto. But the tomatoes are slowly coming. I've had my first meal of tomatoes, so hopefully I'll be getting a lot more soon. So as you can see, there's plenty of wilderness in this garden, but also plenty of production. This season, I didn't want to fill the garden out with produce that I can't use. At the moment, I don't have a kitchen. I'm still waiting for my builder to come and do my renovations that are needed. So at the moment, with only a temporary kitchen, I'm kind of glad my garden isn't full. I hope you've enjoyed this update video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.